I would like to thank Lord Dyson and his team for the report. It is welcome that the BBC accepts Lord Dyson's findings in full, which are extremely concerning. That BBC employees lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother.
I want the monarchy to change. These words weren't spoken by a critic or historian. They were written by Princess Diana herself in a letter that remained hidden for decades. A letter that reveals what she truly wanted for her son, Prince William. The world thought they knew everything about the people's princess. But this long-lost letter changes everything we thought we knew about the royal family's most beloved rebel. If you look at the British monarchy, you'll see centuries of tradition, protocol, and unwavering formality. But one name stands out: Diana. The woman who shattered royal norms and captured hearts worldwide. Yet despite countless books, documentaries, and interviews, there's one piece of Diana's story that remained buried. Until now. The truth is that Diana left behind something extraordinary for her son William. A letter so personal, so revealing that it was kept hidden from the public eye for over 2 decades. Because while Diana's mascot was a compassionate princess, a more accurate symbol would be a revolutionary, with ideas so radical they threatened the very foundation of the 1,000-year-old institution she married into. In most royal narratives, Diana is portrayed as a victim, manipulated, isolated, and ultimately destroyed by forces beyond her control. Hence why she's often remembered more for her tragic death than her groundbreaking life. But whether you realize it or not, you've been missing half the story. In Diana's home country of Britain, everyone understands how she transformed the monarchy. But in her letter to William, it's a very different story. Everyone is aware Diana wanted change, but few understand just how dramatically she planned to reshape the royal family through her eldest son. And that's because against all odds, Diana achieved the seemingly impossible. She created a blueprint for a modern monarchy that's only now being fully realized. You see, Diana wrote this letter during the most turbulent period of her life, when her marriage was crumbling and her relationship with the palace was at its breaking point. This wasn't just any letter. It was essentially Diana's manifesto for William's future as king. And that's because Diana understood something the royal family didn't. That the monarchy's survival depended on its ability to evolve. And the reason this letter matters so much is because it reveals Diana wasn't just rebelling against royal protocol. She was strategically planning a complete reinvention of the monarchy through her son. That's more than the average mother teaching values to her child. That's a woman with a vision so powerful it continues to reshape one of the world's oldest institutions decades after her death. And then it gets more extraordinary when you realize that the line between Diana's hopes and William's actions today is crystal clear, meaning the changes we're seeing in the modern monarchy, from mental health advocacy to more authentic public engagement, aren't random developments. They're the direct result of Diana's influence and the specific instructions she left for her son. Not just that, but private messages and notes that have been sent through this letter are scanned by royal watchers to see if they align with Diana's vision. If you say anything the royal establishment doesn't want you to, the best case scenario is your perspective just doesn't get coverage. Worst case scenario is you're labeled a conspiracy theorist or simply disappear from royal narratives. For example, one royal correspondent literally just made a thoughtful analysis about Diana's influence on William's parenting style and soon found himself sidelined from major royal events. And it almost seems like the palace wants people to be unaware of Diana's true legacy, because the British monarchy has even openly confirmed that it can control which stories get covered in the mainstream media without permission from the public or oversight. Now, of course, as we know from countless revelations about media manipulation, controlling narratives is certainly not something unique to the British royal family. However, the monarchy has definitely taken it to new levels. The BBC, Britain's national broadcaster, carried out a report on how royal coverage is managed and filtered. And they concluded the worst offender by far was the Royal Press Office, the only institution to literally score 0 out of 100 for its transparency and what they do with information about Diana's legacy. This is because of massive problems with how they control which parts of Diana's story get told, where it ends up, and not even denying that it gives the palace a backdoor to suppress certain aspects of her legacy. Now, of course, pretty much all powerful institutions have to have some control over their public image in order to survive. But the British monarchy is unique because it has been allowed to monopolize the Diana narrative and use sophisticated tactics to shape public perception without any interference from independent oversight. But in exchange for that freedom, some would say they've turned into a machine for rewriting history. It's estimated the palace has thousands of items from Diana's personal collection, including letters to William that the public has never seen. For example, during William's childhood, the palace reportedly used Diana's private correspondence to determine which aspects of her parenting should be highlighted or downplayed in official accounts. Another example is ordering William to change his approach to certain causes Diana championed, as well as making royal protocols add facial recognition to monitor how Diana is discussed in media, so mentions can be limited to 90 minutes per news cycle. But before you think this doesn't affect you, think again. You see, once Diana established her connection with the public, she began expanding her influence and essentially went on one of the biggest truth-telling sprees in royal history. They've invested heavily in controlling narratives around Diana's letters to William, her parenting philosophy, and her vision for the monarchy. And those are just a couple of the many hundreds of aspects of Diana's legacy that the palace now manages. They are also the largest producer of royal documentaries in the world, with resources significantly higher than any independent filmmaker. This is particularly significant when you consider that Diana's letters are just one of countless different historical records the palace controls, and yet their content about William alone is bigger than the entire historical archive of some smaller royal families. And the reason the monarchy is so dominant in controlling Diana's legacy is because they own 100% of her official correspondence, creator of her royal image, 40% of her personal effects, not to mention stakes in numerous media organizations that cover royal news. The same is true in other areas. For example, Diana's charity work is nearly as big as some entire humanitarian organizations, and her reported influence on William generates over 1 billion media mentions per year, more than many global political figures combined. They've also got Diana's fashion legacy. They're huge in cultural influence and are even now involved in shaping Hollywood portrayals of her life. In other words, it's hard to fully grasp just how large Diana's impact truly is. But it's only recently that the world has started to realize the influence her private guidance to William, and thus the future of the monarchy actually has. One small example was how Martin Bashir, the BBC journalist who secured Diana's infamous 1995 interview, used forged documents to manipulate Diana into speaking publicly. This caused many people to ask, how is this one media figure seemingly dictating what the public is allowed to know about Diana's relationship with William? The same was true with royal biographers. You see, certain authors have dealt with the palace to present Diana's story in approved ways. In response, independent researchers said they would not be censoring any aspects of Diana's legacy in future. So soon after this, these researchers were forced to retract their statements, backtrack on their findings, and apologize for their inappropriate research. Journalists then came out stating that they love the monarchy, so whilst in recent years some have started to wonder if the palace could use its control of Diana's legacy to influence things abroad, the answer seems to be that they already are. Multiple media organizations from the US to Australia have now called Diana's letters to William a security threat, and others have suggested they're a monitoring weapon in your pocket. But what's perhaps most fascinating about Diana's letters is that you can look at them in two ways. On one hand, Diana is one of the greatest examples of a mother's love story ever. At one point, she had only her children to rely on, and so the journey of how this vulnerable young woman turned her maternal instincts into one of the world's most powerful forces for change is remarkable and filled with useful lessons and genius parenting strategies. What she achieved is ridiculously impressive, and there is definitely an argument that Diana has been unfairly caught in the middle of a political storm that she didn't want any part of. But on the other hand, Diana is often surrounded by controversy. This includes her complicated relationship with the media, her strategic use of public sympathy, and the extreme polarization her legacy continues to generate. Freedom of interpretation, accusations of manipulation on all sides, and the fact multiple countries now see Diana's legacy as a national security risk because of its close ties to the British establishment. But I do want to be clear. To just dismiss Diana as a pawn of the palace is unfair. In fact, right now, the royal family is actively working to control certain narratives about her relationship with William, and is responsible for suppressing hundreds of pieces of correspondence that could reshape our understanding. Which of course just raises even more questions. Why would the palace be damaging one of its most valuable assets? As you can see, the Diana-William letter story has a lot of different pieces to it. There is both good and bad, and several plot twists along the way. Honestly, I've covered lots of different historical relationships, but Diana's guidance to William is one of the most fascinating. In this video, we're going on a journey through Diana's extraordinary relationship with William to find out the truth behind this hidden correspondence. A mother who influenced so much and yet is so rarely fully understood. How did she shape the future king? What are they planning next? And what does it mean for all of us? So buckle up, because I assure you, the story of Diana's secret letter to William is going to be a wild ride. If you walked past Princess Diana on the street during her early years as a royal, you'd probably notice her. But when it comes to understanding her as a mother, despite having such a public life, it's quite likely you've never seen the real story before. She goes by the name of Diana Spencer in English. However, this is her actual birth name. But since her marriage to Prince Charles, she became known worldwide as Princess Diana, the mother who would change the monarchy forever through her son. But to truly understand the significance of Diana's letter to William, we need to go back to the beginning. To understand how a young kindergarten teacher became the most famous woman in the world, and how her relationship with her eldest son would ultimately reshape one of the world's oldest institutions.